No parent should ever have to think about the way their child was murdered. In my mind, I keep hearing Laci say to me, "Mom, please find me and Connor and bring us home. I'm scared. Please don't leave us out here all alone."
A couple walking their dog calls in authorities, claiming they found the body of a male fetus on a tidal flat of the San Francisco Bay shoreline at Point Isabel Regional Shoreline. The following day, a jogger discovers a human torso in the riprap along the same shoreline, about a mile from where the fetus had been found.
The body of a woman washed up on shore was discovered yesterday in Richmond, which is on the East Bay side of the San Francisco Bay yesterday. One day earlier, about a mile away from that location, a different person discovered the body of a nearly full-term fetus.
Doctors conclude the fetus died in utero, and its body was expelled from the woman's decomposing corpse when the skin over her abdominal cavity ruptured naturally. Seawater had entered her abdominal cavity, washing out most of her internal organs as well as the fetus. DNA tests confirm the bodies are those of Laci Peterson and her unborn son Connor. Life still looked painfully normal. Around 5:45 p.m., Scott and Laci stopped by Salon, where Laci's sister, Amy, worked. Amy cut Scott's hair like she did every month. It was so routine that nothing about it stood out. Scott then offered to pick up a fruit basket Amy had ordered, since he said he'd be golfing the next day near the store. That night, Laci spoke to her mother around 8:30. After that call, only 3 people are confirmed to have talked to Laci before she vanished: her mom, her sister Amy, and Scott. This is the last time Laci is to be ever seen alive. The next morning, Scott claims to have last seen Laci around 9:30 a.m. She was supposedly planning to mop the floor, bake cookies, and walk their golden retriever, Mackenzie.
Told what she was going to do for the day, and
Okay, so she told you what she was going to do for the day.
yeah,
And what was that?
she's going to finish cleaning up. Like I said, she's mopping the kitchen floor. Take the dog for a walk, and then she's going to the store to buy for Christmas morning breakfast tomorrow.
Then he said he left for a solo fishing trip at the Berkeley Marina.
When did you realize you were going to go fishing?
Oh, that was a morning decision. It's either morning, so play golf at the club or go fishing.
Okay.
This is the last time Laci is to be ever seen alive. During his time at California Polytechnic State University, Scott worked at a little spot called Pacific Cafe in Morro Bay. That's where his path first crossed with Laci's. She dropped by to visit a friend who worked there, caught sight of Scott, and eventually slipped him her number in 1994. She even told her mom she'd just met the man she would marry. 2002, things looked like they were lining up exactly the way they'd planned. Laci was pregnant, due in February 2003, and they already had a name picked out for their son, Connor. Laci was 7.5 months pregnant. The due date, February 10th, 2003, was so close you could almost feel the nursery waiting. Her disappearance struck a national nerve instantly. A beautiful, young, expectant mother vanishing on Christmas Eve. The kind of story that grabs headlines before anyone even understands what's happened. Once the alarm bells rang, Modesto police detectives Alan Brocchini and John Bueller took the lead and immediately got on the case. They showed up at the Peterson home to interview Scott and do a basic sweep. Scott stuck to his story.
Morning, so play golf at the club or go fishing.
Okay.
It seemed too cold to go play golf at the club, so.
At 2:15 p.m. that day, he had left Laci a voicemail saying, "Hey beautiful, it's 2:15. I'm leaving Berkeley."
Hey beautiful, I just left a message at home. 2:15, I live in Berkeley. I won't be able to get to Villa Farms to get that basket for Papa. I was hoping you would get this message and go on out there. I'll see you in a bit, sweetie. Love you. Bye.
End of message.
When Scott arrived home later that afternoon, he said Laci's car was in the driveway, but the house was empty. He claimed Mackenzie was in the backyard again. This part would later become messy, as Laci's mother later denies that Scott ever mentioned finding the dog outside a second time. Scott showered and washed his clothes, then wandered to a neighbor's house to ask if they'd seen Laci. Scott eventually called Laci's mother to ask if she was with her. That's when Sharon realized something was very wrong. Scott and Laci's stepfather reported her missing, and police logged the call just before 6 p.m. Meanwhile, the neighborhood began telling a different kind of story. Laci had supposedly taken Mackenzie out for a walk, but around 10:18 to 10:45 a.m., 3 different neighbors reported seeing Mackenzie, the Petersons' dog, wandering the neighborhood alone with a muddy leash. Each one returned the dog to the yard. None saw anything else strange, but the consistent detail is this: Laci was nowhere in sight, and Mackenzie had definitely been out without her. When friends and relatives gathered at the Peterson home that evening, another family member recalled Scott mentioning golf instead of fishing. And when detectives searched the Peterson house, they found Laci's keys, wallet, sunglasses, and purse. Tucked away in a closet, nothing had been taken. That discovery set the gears of a massive search into motion. The very next day, the neighborhood became a sea of people. Over 900 friends, family members, and neighbors combed streets, backyards, and nearby parks, posting flyers as they went. Detective Brocchini held a press conference, emphasizing that Laci leaving without contacting anyone was just not like her. Over 30 police officers and firefighters joined the hunt, on foot, horseback, bikes, and even boats, with search dogs and helicopters equipped with spotlights scanning Dry Creek and the surrounding area. It quickly became a story the whole nation couldn't look away from. Rewards piled up, starting at $25,000, climbing first to $250,000, and then hitting $500,000 for information leading to Laci's safe return. Flyers, blue and yellow ribbons, and posters spread everywhere. A friend of Laci's husband even launched the original LaciPeterson.com website. A command center popped up at the Red Lion Hotel, staffed by family, friends, and volunteers, coordinating calls, organizing searches, and keeping information flowing. Over 1,500 volunteers joined in, distributing flyers, working the center, searching the neighborhood, and even holding candlelight vigils with Scott. First, detectives didn't label the case as suspicious, but almost immediately, they suspected foul play.
Al Brocchini called me in on Christmas Day, and he told me what had happened to Laci and that she was missing, and then he did the bio on her and told me about her. My belief was this was a murder case, and at the time it was a no-body case.
Their focus began quietly zeroing in on Scott. In a 2017 interview, Bueller said he had his doubts the moment he met him. Scott's calm, almost detached demeanor didn't scream, "devastated husband." He wasn't asking about next steps or what the police were doing, just standing there politely. Bueller described it as a strange combination of polite and arrogant.
Scott's demeanor was a little bit too calm compared to the other family members.
Disaffectedly distant, the kind of behavior that didn't fit a man who had just lost his pregnant wife.
His cooperation was guarded. and it was limited. If we got into areas that he didn't want to go into, he would mention his attorney and that he'd have to run that information by his attorney. Pretty unusual for us in a situation like this. Usually people don't do that. They have the right to do it, but generally they don't. They don't put limits on their cooperation. But comparing Scott from the day I met him all the way until the last time I saw him, he never showed any frantic desire to figure out what happened to Laci compared to her mom Sharon, her sister Amy, her brother Brent. Everybody that was from Laci's circle, whether it was Stacy or Lori or Renee or Kim or Ron Gransky, Dennis Rocha, Laci's father, everybody was frantic about where she was, what happened to her, when she was coming back, with the exception of Scott. Now, this could mean that he just had an enormous amount of self-control, which I believe he does, but it also, I've seen it before in other cases where I had guys like this that didn't show that. So it was something I'd seen before. It didn't mean that he had killed her, but because of his demeanor and because of his limited cooperation, it just meant that we had to keep digging until we could find out that he either didn't have anything to do with Laci's disappearance or enough evidence came up to show us that he did.
Even so, Laci's family defended Scott, painting the picture of the couple as the perfect pair. But behind the polite exterior and public support, the detectives couldn't shake the feeling that something about Scott just didn't add up. The tension was building, quietly but unmistakably. The calm before the storm that would grip the nation. Amber Frey comes forward. In November 2002, a friend had introduced Scott to Amber Frey, a massage therapist in Fresno, and Scott started a full-blown romantic relationship with her while Laci was pregnant. She said she'd met Scott back on November 20th, and at that time, he claimed he was single. Then, on December 9th, just a couple of weeks before Laci disappeared, he told her he was a widower, making it sound like he'd already lost Laci and that this would be his first Christmas without her. Those dates didn't line up coincidentally. Detectives began piecing together a chilling possibility. Scott may have started planning Laci's disappearance weeks before it actually happened.
When I searched the interior of the truck, he had told me it was his decision to go fishing that morning. But in the truck, I found a receipt from Big Five where on the 20th, he had purchased a 2-day fishing license and dated it the 23rd and 24th. And so I thought that didn't add up.
To get answers, investigators gave Amber a recording device, hoping she could capture conversations with Scott that might reveal the truth.
As soon as we saw the photo of him at the Christmas party with Amber, and after interviewing Amber and she's telling us all these stories and gifts and cards and things, and they're all coming from Scott's shop, and the fact that she even told us the first day that Scott had told her on December 9th that he lied to her originally when he said he wasn't married, and he broke down and he was sobbing and she was consoling him, and he had said he lost his wife and this was going to be the first holiday without her. And when we get to the drugstore, right next door is a Radio Shack. And I said, well, if he calls you every day, do you mind? I'm going to go buy you a tape recorder, some tapes, and a wire. You plug it in your phone. And she said, okay. And so I bought it.
And we didn't really know what her alliance was at that time, but she called us, so we thought it's probably worth a gamble.
And I'm plugging it in her phone for her, and I'm showing her, okay, when he calls, push these 2 buttons. And sure enough, the phone rings right while I'm holding it, and it's him.
The number shows up on her screen. Al recognizes the number. I didn't. And so Al told her, well, take that call. And so she did. So she started talking to him.
And I said, Amber, you're on, and don't tell him that we're here. And she talked to him like she was his girlfriend.
Finally calmed down from it, so.
I'm sorry, baby.
you. You don't deserve any pain or any heartache or any arguments or anything.
So then why don't you tell me something good?
I'm going to tell you how wonderful you are. That's pretty easy to do. How thoughtful you are. How amazing. You know, I always call you when I tell you you're special.
We also had Amber's call on a wire intercept to make sure that we could monitor her calls if she wasn't recording them, so that we would know that she wasn't filling Scott with information of what was going on.
What were you hoping to get?
Well, we were hoping to get, I don't know, incriminating information, but at first they talked like boyfriend and girlfriend. Even though his wife was missing, she claimed to not know about it. But what Amber didn't know was, as soon as we did that, we also went and got put a phone tap. We tapped Scott's phone, his home, his 2 cell phones, because we wanted to confirm that Amber was being straight with us. She wasn't like conspiring behind our back with him.
Her ability to keep things calm and not tip her hand that she'd already talked to us was remarkable. I thought she did a fantastic job, and apparently the jury did too, because they enjoyed that or found it very useful in the trial.
So while we're still listening to the Amber and Scott talk, and we're wiretapping Scott's phone, we get information from the Inquirer that they have the photo of Amber and Scott, and they're going to publish it the next day.
Although Al Brocchini and I had taken the photo prints from Amber when we'd gotten those at the photo counter, I had left the negatives to those photos with Amber so that she would know that we trusted her. And there were other photos on there that had nothing to do with the Peterson case. I didn't think we could really take those. She said that she was going to make sure they were protected. I can speculate on that, but that's not necessary. Anyway, somehow those photos either got out or they were photos taken by somebody who was there and they got released. And the next thing you know, the National Enquirer's got one of the photos with Amber in the red dress and Scott in the tux, and they're going to run it in that week's edition of the National Enquirer.
So that pushed us to have to break the news to Sharon and to Lee and Jackie.
Well, we have never dealt with that before on a case. We've dealt with a lot of things in homicide before. So we roundtabled that. What do we do on that? Well, you can't ignore it. And at the same time, we don't have the authority to tell the Enquirer, don't run it. Their First Amendment rights trump what we want done on the case. And so we knew that they were going to publish it. But we also don't want the family members, especially the Roaches. You can imagine Sharon going to the grocery store and she's at the check stand and here's a picture of Scott and Amber, who she'd never met, there at the check stand. We can't do that to the family. So we called Sharon and Ron Gransky and asked them if they would come down to our office so that we could talk to them. And this wasn't something that we did very often. So Brocchini and I were going to speak with them. Craig Grogan, along with another Modesto officer who had a pilot's license, and Phil Owen, another Modesto detective, took a plane and they flew down to San Diego to meet with Scott's parents. And the plan was that both sets of family members were going to be shown this photo. And I wasn't in the San Diego part of the trip, so I'm not going to comment too much on that. But we brought Sharon in and Ron, and they were apprehensive because we didn't call them to come and meet with us very often, and made a little bit of small talk and everything. And they were scheduled to do an interview that night with Greta Van Susteren. So this was before they were going to do the interview. So we had the photo, and I had it in a folder, and Sharon was sitting across from me, and I said, well, there's some things that have developed on this case, and we want to make you aware of them before you get surprised and ambushed by them.
And John just shared the photo and slid it across the table, and Sharon just broke down, and she just like, why did he have to kill her?
Sharon Rocha looked at it, and I just remember her words. She just said, why did he have to kill her? And then she buried her head in her hands and started weeping.
Mid-January 2003, the affair was out in the open. On January 15th, detectives told Laci's immediate family about Amber. Sharon Rocha, Laci's mother, didn't hold back. The moment she heard about the affair, she told police she believed Scott had killed her daughter. Just over a week later, on January 24th, Sharon, Laci's stepfather Ron, and Laci's brother Brent held a press conference. Brent explained that Scott had admitted to him over the phone on January 16th that he was seeing a woman in Fresno. The family announced they had withdrawn their support of Scott, citing his lack of communication and cooperation. Later that same day, Amber Frey herself held a press conference, detailing her role in the investigation and confirming what everyone was beginning to suspect. The perfect image of the Petersons' marriage had been hiding something much darker.
Okay, first of all, I met Scott Peterson November 20th, 2002. I was introduced to him. I was told he was unmarried. Scott told me he was not married. We did have a romantic relationship. When I discovered he was involved in the Laci Peterson disappearance case, I immediately contacted the Modesto Police Department.
Scott is a very, very charming, very convincing person, and we saw this throughout his phone calls, whether he was talking to his dad and his, brother, things like that. He could transition from weeping with Amber on the phone over something, and then the next moment he's on a phone call talking to his dad about going to have cocktails in Del Mar or something like that. His chameleon-like ability to transition from one role to another was very interesting. A great actor. But his phone conversations, they kind of showed a side of him also, and they can be interpreted a couple of different ways depending on how you want to look at it. There was one call in particular. Media frenzy was taking place when the Bay search was locating something that was on the bottom of San Francisco Bay that could have been a body.
San Francisco, Marin County, Oakland, every city on the bay had a boat. We put a detective on every boat and with a dive team from those cities. And so I was on the Marin County boat, and they had sonar boats out there, and they would search for objects that looked like it could be a body. If they found one, they would pinpoint it, and then we would send a boat there, and we would send divers down and to figure out what it was. One of the things they found something that looked like, like this, like it could be a body. This is before she came up. And so it was late at night. The dive team couldn't go down in the dark, so they were going to go down the next morning. So big anticipation. All the news know. They're all waiting. Sharon, this is before Sharon knew about Amber. Sharon's still on Scott's side. And Scott decides he has to go to work that day. So he leaves. Well, we don't follow him, but we know where he's at by his phone. And everybody's waiting, holding their breath. The dive team goes down, comes up. It turns out it's just a big anchor, an old anchor.
And so this information was given to Sharon Rocha. So she called Scott on his cell. And Scott had a habit of very seldom picking up the phone. He would screen his calls, listen to the voicemails, and then decide what to do with the calls. Well, the call from Sharon said that it was a boat anchor, nothing to worry about there. Of course, we knew that.
We're going to find her, just some sweet message from Sharon to Scott. Well, we got the wiretap on him so we could hear him. And so we can hear him pick up his messages. As soon as he starts dialing, we hear it. He puts his code in and hears Sharon's message.
You have one unheard message. First message. Scott, this is Mom. It's about 1:45. Just wanted to know, I just got a call from Ron Cloward. He's at the marina, and it was a boat anchor. Of course, we knew it wasn't Laci, but I just wanted you to know. I'm going to call your house in case you don't get this message first. Bye. Message erased.
And then you hear him go, whew, just like that. Like, whew. Now, he's been radio silent all day. Well, now all of a sudden, after he has that whew moment, meaning it wasn't her, they didn't find her yet. Now he's on the phone ordering pizza and, X-rated movies from the hotel he's staying at. And then, so he can go from ordering a pizza and an X-rated movie to his sister calling him, and he answers, and now he's blubbering like a baby. Oh my God, he's just crying and blah, blah, blah.
Two people walking their dog came across something horrifying: the body of a male fetus on a tidal flat at Point Isabel along the San Francisco Bay. The very next day, a jogger found a human torso in the riprap along the shoreline, about a mile from where the fetus had been discovered. Just a few days later, on April 18th, DNA tests confirmed the unthinkable. The bodies were those of the woman and her unborn son, Connor. The autopsies were performed by a forensic pathologist, Dr. Laci Peterson, who was not related to the family. While the official reports were sealed, an anonymous source revealed that the fetus had minor decomposition, unexplained mutilations on its right side, and a length of nylon cord wrapped around the body. How those injuries happened, or how the cord ended up there, couldn't be conclusively determined. The woman's body was in an advanced state of decomposition, bloated, missing her head, arms, most of her legs, and her internal organs. Her autopsy showed 2 cracked ribs and some broken neck bones, though her uterus and cervix were intact. Experts couldn't determine exactly when the ribs or neck bones were broken, or the precise date of her death. There were early rumors that her body had been dismembered intentionally, but Dr. Peterson and state forensic pathologists found no signs of human-made cuts. They concluded that the missing limbs and organs were consistent with a body that had been weighted at the wrists and ankles and submerged in seawater for several months. The head, arms, and legs were never recovered. For the fetus, Dr. Peterson confirmed it had died in utero. Its body had been expelled naturally from the woman's decomposing corpse when the skin over her abdomen ruptured. Seawater had washed out most of her internal organs along with the fetus, leaving behind the shocking remains that were eventually recovered. Once the bodies were found, the whole case shifted overnight. What had started as a missing person investigation became a homicide, and detectives immediately zeroed in on Scott as their prime suspect. The FBI and Modesto police launched forensic searches of the Peterson home and belongings, hunting for anything that might link him to the crime. One key piece came from Scott's fishing boat. A hair wrapped around a pair of pliers in the boat was matched, using mitochondrial DNA testing, to hairs from Laci's hairbrush. That small detail tied him directly to her in a way that couldn't be ignored. Investigators also searched Scott's truck, toolbox, and warehouse, uncovering a homemade concrete anchor, part of a set of anchors he had purchased 2 weeks before, reporting Laci missing. Scott told detectives he'd used a 90-pound bag of concrete to make just one anchor for the boat, and that the rest had been for driveway repairs. But when Detective Henry Dodge Hendy examined Scott's warehouse, he found cement powder on the boat trailer, along with 5 circular impressions matching the bucket used to mix the concrete. Hendy also found a sledgehammer and a dustpan covered in cement powder. Prosecutors alleged Scott had made 5 anchors in total, using 4 of them, one tied to each of Laci's wrists and ankles, to sink her body in the bay. Police later searched the water for the anchors after his arrest, but nothing was ever recovered. Even as investigators dug through his physical evidence, they began tracking Scott's movements. Using a GPS locator on his car, Detectives Brocchini and Bueller followed him all the way to San Diego. They feared he might be planning to flee to Mexico, but when they tried to keep tabs electronically, Scott had switched vehicles making their GPS useless. Every detail, every movement seemed to pull the case tighter around him. Police intensified surveillance of Scott, tracking his car and monitoring his calls. He was less than 30 miles from the Mexican border, and detectives were convinced he was planning to flee. Scott was arrested at a golf course in La Jolla while meeting family. By then, he had dyed his hair and beard blonde, and his car was packed with nearly $15,000 in cash, Viagra, camping, and survival gear, multiple changes of clothes, several cell phones, and 2 driver's licenses. Authorities said these items, along with the dyed hair and switched car, suggested he was trying to disguise himself and escape. Scott was returned to Modesto and booked into the county jail. He was arraigned and charged with 2 counts of premeditated murder, to which he pleaded not guilty. Because of the intense publicity and concerns about jury bias, the trial was moved to another county. The trial began in 2004 and was closely followed by the media. During the trial, the prosecution argued that Scott killed his wife because of his affair, highlighting his behavior before and after she disappeared. Claiming he lied about golfing, asked police if cadaver dogs had been used, and tried to mislead investigators. The defense admitted Scott had cheated, but ridiculed the idea that he would kill his wife over a brief affair. They also questioned the forensic evidence, including a hair found in Scott's boat, suggesting she could have left it there before her disappearance. The case was largely built on circumstantial evidence. Prosecutors pointed to motives including marital tension, pressure from the pregnancy, the affair, and financial stress. Witnesses described Scott's unusual behavior after his wife vanished, showing little emotion, avoiding family, attending no candlelight vigils, and falsely claiming he had been golfing. He changed his appearance, added pornographic channels, sold the family car, and made recorded phone calls to the woman he was having an affair with. Financial records showed the couple lived beyond their means, but Scott had ample available credit. November 12, 2004. Scott was convicted of first-degree murder for his wife and second-degree murder for the fetus. The penalty phase concluded December 13, 2004, with a sentence of death by lethal injection. Later, jurors explained that their verdict was based on hundreds of small pieces of circumstantial evidence, from the location of the body to the lies Scott told after the disappearance. In 2005, a judge ruled that proceeds from a $250,000 life insurance policy would go to the victim's mother. Scott arrived at San Quentin State Prison in March 2005, joining California's death row while appeals continued. After Scott's conviction, his legal team filed an automatic appeal challenging the death sentence, arguing that trial errors and media publicity had prevented a fair trial. The California Supreme Court heard the appeal in 2020 and, in a unanimous decision, upheld his conviction but overturned the death sentence, finding that jurors had been improperly dismissed for their opposition to capital punishment. Prosecutors initially considered retrying the penalty phase but later decided against it. In 2021, Scott was resentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole for the first-degree murder of his wife, with a concurrent sentence of 15 years to life for the second-degree murder of the fetus. He was transferred to a different state prison in 2022 to serve his new sentence. Scott also filed a habeas corpus petition, which allows for consideration of new evidence, claiming juror misconduct and possible sightings of the victim after the disappearance. Courts repeatedly rejected these claims, stating there was no credible evidence to support them. In 2024, a legal advocacy organization took up his case and requested additional DNA testing and access to evidence. A judge approved limited DNA testing on one piece of evidence but rejected broader testing. Later, in 2025, the appeals court denied a petition claiming that exculpatory evidence had been withheld or destroyed. Scott remains in prison serving his life sentence, with all appeals exhausted or denied. Laci and her unborn son, Connor, were buried at Burwood Cemetery on August 30th, 2003. Their headstone lists Laci under her maiden name and leaves Connor without a surname, per the wishes of her mother and stepfather. The funeral cost $10,000, which a judge later ordered Scott to pay. Their deaths led to the passage of the Unborn Victims of Violence Act, also known as Laci and Connor's Law, signed by President George W. Bush in 2004. The law makes it a separate federal offense if someone causes death or injury to an unborn child during the commission of a crime against a pregnant woman. Scott was also barred from collecting on Laci's $250,000 life insurance policy, which instead went to her mother, Sharon Rocha. A $25 million wrongful death lawsuit was later filed by Laci's mother and stepfather, but was dropped in 2009. Sharon Rocha published a memoir in 2006 about Laci's life and death, with all proceeds funding the Laci and Connor Search and Rescue Fund. The story of Laci and Connor Peterson shocked the nation, revealing betrayal, grief, and the fragility of life. Justice was served, but their memory lives on, in the laws passed, the Fund for Search and Rescue, and in the hearts of those who remember them. Their lives may have been cut short, but their legacy continues. If you found this story compelling, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you won't miss our deep dives into true crime and other gripping cases. Your support helps us keep uncovering the stories that matter.